Welcome to convention. Sisters, brothers, friends, this is our time. I believe it's very important for the union itself, or the representative, myself, the president, to really get out and meet the members and have an idea of the work that the members do. So what I decided to do was do a members tour, was to get out and see our members in their workplace.
I think it was really important for Jason to get out through his first term in the presidential office and get around to the province to discover different locals and our different facets of work, because we are a very diverse union. And he got out there to meet the membership, which is always really important.
NSGEU is 31,000 members across this province, and I tried to get an opportunity to meet as many as possible and to take pictures, show them off, talk about the work they do, and to be able to do little profiles.
And I think getting out, meeting the members, connecting with them, getting to understand the work they do and the challenges they face is important as a leadership.
I was at our parks. I think I've seen almost all of our parks across the province and met our members that are working in our parks. It's just been amazing. It was just unreal, the amount of occupations that I got out to see, and I'm thankful that the employers trusted in us to go in there and do the work and meet our members and show it off, because we're showing off the work our members do, and the employers should benefit from it as well, because our members do a great job on behalf of Nova Scotians.
I think that every interaction with any member, or even a non-member, is just as important as the rallies that we do, right? Because it's all about making sure, especially as a member to member, that you're feeling supported and you're not alone.
I think the thing that I'm most proud of is how we have approached our current government. I think that they have made it very difficult, and our members have remained strong working together.
Before I was president, I was on the bargaining team. So we were going back and forth, but we didn't get a good feel from the employer side, because they always had to check to see if everything's okay at the road they're going down, and everything they were talking about was fiscal envelope and fiscal responsibility.
So there was a fair amount of bullying by our employer, to say the very least, but I think our members held firm and did the best job they could do with their hands tied behind their back, basically.
Everyone knows that one of the things government always has the ability to do is to legislate.
The threat of a bill, that's when things really start to take a turn for us. And not only that, we really want to see where the teachers were going, because we thought it was a foregone conclusion that they would take it. But the teachers didn't.
Nova Scotia teachers have struck down a tentative agreement with government in spite of a union recommendation that they accepted. Now, the Public Service Union is deferring a vote on a tentative agreement with similar terms.
The teachers emboldened the bargaining team that we had, and we had the courage to go back to the council and say, we want you guys to change your vote to a no. And the council gave us the permission. We changed our vote to a no, then we started on our campaign. You know, we're NSGEU, and when you flipped it over, it said no. It was our way of saying that we're voting no to our fellow brothers and sisters.
Things didn't get any better for the Liberals when the teachers' union voted against a tentative deal. The government lashed out at it and the NSGEU and then backed down.
We're trying to be calm and take the second step, which is to allow more time for all of the partners to consider the options.
That option quickly turned into wage legislation for 75,000 people in the public sector.
The Public Service Sustainability Act provides public sector employers with a framework for the new money they can offer for wages.
I have an emergency call tonight with my bargaining team, and I have an emergency call tonight as well with my bargaining council. We finally got to see it. So what we said was, let's go at them. Let's take them on.
There's a protest underway at this hour at Province House downtown. It's being led by the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, with many of the province's biggest unions also taking part. They're speaking out against the province's proposed wage legislation for roughly 75,000 public sector workers.
Ron, as you can see, I'm surrounded by protesters here at Province House. They're marching around the building and also standing on the back, shouting at the door, calling out Stephen McNeil and the Liberal government.
Every single one of the 31,000 members we have in this province. We've been bargaining with this employer. We've been bargaining with the Premier, actually, out of the Premier's office for over a year now. We are experiencing what you're experiencing. What's going on is they do not want to sit down at the table. They do not want to treat us like equals. So what we're doing is we're voting no. We're on the same.
Government has to be stopped. McNeil, this will be his 6th try. It's good. It feels good to have everybody out in solidarity. One cause, one people.
And I want to thank every single one of you for voting down that terrible deal that they tried to push down our throats. And we're with you all the way. We will not stop. In solidarity for every worker in Nova Scotia. Thank you very much.
Mr. Levine?
Yes.
Mr. Delory?
Yes.
With a majority government, the Liberals will have no trouble passing Bill 148. The Progressive Conservatives say they are voting against the bill because it's likely unconstitutional. The NDP are voting against it because they say it tramples union rights.
We couldn't afford to run the risk of letting a third-party arbitrator determine what our ability to pay is.
We see what the teachers, I hear what the teachers are saying. We see what they're doing, and you know what? If we don't stick together and try and educate Nova Scotians, then McNeil is just going to continue on the route that he's on.
The province's deputy sheriffs are among the 7,600 civil servants voting on their tentative agreement this week.
We're recommending that they vote no. We believe this deal is detrimental to the membership.
The government needs a major union to accept its wage offer in order to establish a pattern. But after the teachers' union rejected a similar contract last year, the NSGEU flipped its recommendation from a yes to a no. Finance Minister Randy Delory told reporters last week it's too early to speculate on the outcome.
I look forward to them voting and letting us know.
All right, so I just want to let everybody know today that our membership has voted, and they voted 94% in rejection of the employer's final offer. We voted that down, and that's what set the table for us to start moving in arbitration. But it's only because the Bargaining Unit Negotiating Council backed us up.
I'm very pleased today. I'm a very proud member of the NSGEU.
Fist bump.
Extremely proud of the members for standing up and saying no.
Reaffirm that our traveling across the province to Amherst, Truro, New Glasgow, Yarmouth, Sydney, or Roxbury, and this is the culmination of it.
What about the general climate of bargaining right now between the province and public employees? What are your thoughts?
Well, my thought is Stephen McNeil can't get a deal. And then ultimately, when we voted down the deal, we put ourselves in a position to where we can mosey on down the road to arbitration, and that's what McNeil didn't want. He wanted some controls on it, and we took that from him.
Laying down the law, Nova Scotia imposes a wage settlement on its public servants.
Good evening. The battle between the McNeil government and Nova Scotia's public sector unions is back on tonight.
The Liberals have proclaimed legislation that effectively imposes a wage cap on 75,000 public sector employees. At the same time, the province is seeking a legal opinion from the courts to see if it will hold up to a challenge from the unions.
His name is Stephen McNeil. Who's a dictator? And we don't listen. And that's why we've been successful. So what we're going to do now is go down there, show them who NSGEU is, who labor is in Nova Scotia, and we're gonna make a ton of noise and kick some ass.
We are.
This government. I am sick of Steve McNeil. But what we need to do today, we need to demand from Steve McNeil to not just send the pittance, the little pieces of the legislation of Bill 148 to the Court of Appeals. What we need to do is demand that he sends the bill in its entirety to the Court of Appeals.
I want to bring a message of solidarity from 370,000 workers across this country who are proud to stand with you when you fight for your basic rights. I was here during the Bill 1 fight, and they thought they had us on the run, and we spent a lot of time on these streets, and the people that had to back down at the end of the day were that government in there, not you folks here.
I think it sucks. It's taken us back to dictatorship. It needs to go. 29. What local are you with? 29. Hello. Hello.
There's not a lot I can say without censoring it, but
it sucks.
It's not right. They have no right to do it to us, to do it to anybody.
But they cannot legislate pieces out of your collective agreement, and fundamentally that's what they were doing.
NSGEU, along with 7 other unions, have come together to challenge Bill 148 in the Supreme Court. At the Court of Appeal, we'll be hearing what that decision is in the fall, and we're looking forward to it. And when we bring all the unions together, it really shows that the unions can work together, and it demonstrates to the province that we're very serious in taking on this challenge.
We basically rocked that, and we took it to the courts and we stood strong.
I guess fighting the imposition of a wage pattern and taking away our long service award, I thought not only disrespected and impacted our most senior, or what's the word I'm looking for, experienced members, but it also affected our new members coming in. Not much incentive to stay working. So I was really proud that we're actually taking that to court and fighting that. You know, sometimes you need to stand up, and this is one of the things you need to stand up for.
It was a pretty bleak time, and people were feeling pretty hopeless, I guess, about the way that this government was just legislating everything and not willing to negotiate and not being fair at all. And NSGEU, with their powerful minds that they have, were able to come up with kind of a way to beat the government at their own game, in that we came up with kind of the longer term of wage pattern, which guaranteed a better outlook than it certainly looked with the government's proposed legislation. And so we have kind of made a little bit of a bed or a padding for our members on a go-forward basis.
We made an argument that we want to go beyond the wage restraint, and an arbitrator could rule beyond the wage restraint. So ultimately what we had was a 6-year deal and not the 4-year deal of the 001, 1.5 with a 0.5 at the end of the 4th year. We have 2 more years of 2%, which is compounded 1.5 and 0.5 and 1.5 and 0.5. Now people say we don't write home about 2% raises or whatever, but we were looking at more wage restraint with this McNeil Liberal government. And what we did was beat that down, that we can get time to breathe, time to look at the acts, time to hopefully get some decisions on these pieces of legislation they got there, and get right back into the round of bargaining. We're back in it now.
And that's what I find we're doing on a daily basis. I find my union is continually fighting the Liberal government to survive, to continue giving the rights that we have had previous workers fight for so many years to get, that if we don't continue now, we're going to lose them.
One good thing is that we broke out of those two out of the contract, and we had areas for our benefit package, and I was part of that committee, and we looked at the benefit package and worked on that so that we could introduce benefits that sort of we missed over the years, and we looked at generic drugs and how much money that saved the plan, and allowed us to expand other areas in the plan so that our members can benefit and also have a zero increase in any of the costs. So it was good in that avenue. So the bad was the fact, the frustrating with the Public Service Commission and the government. The good is that we had to open up our benefit package and deal with that.
When McNeil had his ideology coming in as to what he wanted, he didn't think it through, and he thought because he's the premier and he had a majority government that his piece of legislation would be it.
The Nova Scotia government is getting ready to introduce a bill just about an hour from now that will reduce the number of health authorities in the province and streamline collective bargaining. The health minister says it will save about $5 million a year, but the unions say it will create a whole lot of turmoil.
It was NSGEU will have one group, NSNU will have another group, QP, Unifor, they will all have their groups. And that's all that's to it. And that's all you'll represent, and that's all you'll bargain for. Well, he failed miserably when Mr. Dorsey came into town, the person that he hired and fired 3 times.
Dorsey is finished.
But that didn't stop the government-appointed arbitrator from issuing another ruling today. In an email sent to all parties, Dorsey announced the NSGEU was now the exclusive bargaining agent for clerical.
But there's always other applicable laws that he didn't take into consideration, and those are the ones that bit him in the butt in the end.
Ron, we know what the government wants to do next, but there are a number of live wires that the health minister will have to contend with. First, the unions say they will take the government to court if it doesn't follow Dorsey's ruling. And second, we don't know yet whether Dorsey will stop his work or simply continue against the government's wishes.
It took 1 week for Premier Stephen McNeil to take over this process, invite the unions to closed-door talks, and deliver today's decision.
This is, in my view, a good day.
Mr. Jessom. Aye. Mr. Irving.
Yes. Bill number 69, entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 32 of the Acts of 2014, the Health Authorities Act.
Ordered that the bill do pass and the title be as read by the clerk.
This was the first term that since Bill 1. So the bargaining council
I believe it was very important to be a part of that, and I really took a lot away from working together not only as NSGEU but with CUPE and Unifor. We had to take all the contracts from across Nova Scotia with the 3 other unions involved, get it down to one contract, which actually took over a year worth of work before we could even table the contract.
We just had so much to do in terms of relations. NSGEU has its own way of going about business, right? NSNU, CUPE, and Unifor also have their own way. We had to learn about each other. We had to learn what our agendas were, what it was that we wanted. And then we had to come to a common place where we felt was strong in representing all the membership, and ultimately that's where we got.
It was very encouraging to find that most of the collective agreement articles that we went forward with were actual NSGEU language. I feel confident and very proud of the fact that we stayed with most of the language that we have already fought for very hard in past bargaining processes. And I also feel that we brought together, working together to find out what the differences were with the different collective agreements to make sure that we tried to get the best that we could for our members.
The bargaining team of the healthcare bargaining unit, they were phenomenal. The work that they've done, 40 bargaining meetings. Most times didn't even see the employer, but 40 meetings over a 1.5 to 2 year span. They were exhausted at the end. They were, I would say, somewhat delirious, but they were just so overwhelmed with what they were given at that table, what they had to go up against, that nobody can give them enough kudos for what they've done.
It was a very taxing time in terms of engagement, and you know, at the end of the day, when it came down to the 11th hour with bargaining, it really made a difference in terms of our unions coming together and having one voice.
I think MacLean thought by putting the unions together that we would end up hating each other and fighting. Did not happen. We worked together. We came out with a very good, strong contract. We were very, very worried going into it with all the bills that were coming out against healthcare workers.
I think they wanted the unions to fight and members to be divided. And actually, in the end, they are really unified and solid. And it seems really great to see everybody working together and trying to achieve kind of the same goals, and for workers to gain more benefits and not lose them.
We couldn't move on the proposals that we were putting forward. So with the employer really holding out on us, we kind of hit a stalemate.
A lack of results through bargaining between the Nova Scotia Healthcare Council of Unions and the province has prompted the council to consider taking action, job action.
The employer doesn't seem to be acting as if this is real bargaining. It is real bargaining. It's people's lives that have been hanging out there for the last 4 years, and we want to come to a conclusion of bargaining, so we feel this will give some pressure.
Pressure in the form of a strike vote. Soon, 6,500 healthcare workers will tell their bargaining unit if they're ready to walk off the job to force a deal, a question they think they already know the answer to.
Their mood is, finally, we're doing something.
We're now still in negotiations, talking with them, and we hope we get a settlement.
Premier Stephen MacLean downplays the council gauging strike interest, remaining confident it won't go that far.
That's certainly the right. As you know, we had essential service legislation that was here. All 4 bargaining units assured Nova Scotians that they would have in place essential service legislation. If they exercise their right to strike, we look forward to them delivering that essential service legislation to the people of Nova Scotia.
So the essential services, what it did was it set us off on looking and analyzing both sides of the 2 health authorities, the IWK and the Nova Scotia Health Authority. So what we did was we got some capable members, along with staff here in NSGEU, to actually analyze what's going on, start doing interviews with members in the IWK, and we realized quickly that we could actually map out the IWK. The employer wanted 70% of the membership in the workplace if there was going to be a strike. 70% on any given day. There's not 70% of staff in a hospital. What we were successful at getting was 35%. Well, ultimately, We got there, we're in a legal strike position with a successful strike position with the IWK, to where our members are like, oh my goodness, right? And right then, government buckled. They said, let's make a deal. What are we talking about? And that's when we went with the back and forth. And that's where we ended up getting the deal where our members kept status quo on some key provisions, and then we went to the arbitrator with others.
So we went from 1,600 members in our local bargaining to close to 3,000. 3,000 people have more of a voice than 1,600. And if 3,000 people across the province go out on strike, it's going to hurt the government more than 1,600 people in one district.
It was really hard. Just uncertainty of where people were going to go, what was going to happen, kind of the unknown, losing benefits. We had really good leadership in all the different unions, and we had a lot of members as well. People that we've never seen before came out and worked together and just reassure one another that we would get through it and things would be better in the end.
The right to strike is the only way that we got a deal, right? We got a deal in the civil service in another way. I mean, you have Steve McNeil the whole time saying, we don't need a third party, we don't need a third party. Well, guess what? He's always been that third party. When he came with all those bills, that was being the third party. We were already dealing with our employers.
The fight itself for me was finding value in what we do. It was going from being a valuable member and being appreciated to suddenly being told that we weren't really appreciated and we weren't really valuable members, that the things that we had earned over the years didn't matter anymore. So it really kind of was demoralizing for the healthcare group. And so for me, I wanted to get in there and fight for what our rights were and to bring back what we had already earned and not to lose anything for all the members. It was actually a great motivator and a great learning experience, and it taught me that you can't sit back and watch. You need to get involved and you need to fight.
We did it as a council. We did it together. All of labor banded together, and what they couldn't do was separate us and beat us down. Coming into my presidency, I realized that Trudeau was going to legalize cannabis. That was his big selling point in the last election, but the question was when. So what we did was we worked internally here at NSGEU with communications and research, and we did up a survey and sent a survey out to our membership. And it came back overwhelmingly in favor of selling cannabis. So it's only a concept then, right? But what we wanted to do was put it to work. So boots to the ground, I guess, if you want to call it that. We got out there and we lobbied the Premier, lobbied the opposition parties. It lobbied Brett Mitchell in the NSLC. At that time he was CEO. And we let it be known. NSGEU is in favor of this, and we believe this is a good move for Nova Scotia.
And so cannabis for me, and the jobs it has provided for some of our members, has been absolutely the greatest story. And again, it's a very pleasing moment to see so many people getting hard and getting full-time jobs, especially where I come from in Cape Breton, which we know is having a hard time economically.
As I say, for a true partnership of working with an employer, we told them we would be there to help them any bit of the way. We offered space in our building, and they took up space in our building and did training for new hires for cannabis and people that transferred over from liquor to cannabis. And it was just a huge success on our end, working with the employer, trying to get to an end date of October 17th when it was going to be legal. With that though, we have 150 jobs at the NSLC to where they have an issue on how are they going to motivate new hires, because you had such an influx of people that you're getting new people in that don't have the experience with the organization to be loyal to the organization.
A lot of the people, and I can speak specifically with the Cape Breton store in Sydney River, it's mostly the full-time people there are mostly new members. They receive some great training. And from what I hear from people coming in the store, they've just handled the job really well, and people love the service. And it's just going well, and again, The younger members are just thrilled to have a job, and the training is ongoing, and we just hope to keep it in-house for many years to come.
The new campaign on social work, where we're bringing light to the fact that our social workers are too overworked. They're not able to help the way they need to be able to help.
We're here today because we're trying to inform Nova Scotians that child welfare is on the brink.
The Nova Scotia College of Social Workers and the Nova Scotia Government and General Employee Union, which represents social workers, are launching a campaign to draw attention to the issue. The campaign will feature ads on buses throughout Halifax and Cape Breton.
Our clients that we deal with on a regular daily basis are coming through that office because they have no money for things that they need for their family, to feed their children, for a place to live.
Our members on the ground going above and beyond their duties to try and hold this system together. What we've continually seen is an erosion of our capacity to deliver social services in this province, and that's due to underfunding of social services across the board. As Jason mentioned, austerity policies are making it increasingly difficult to do the work that is needed.
They're not able to get out into the field. They're not able to actually go visit families and assess families properly. These are the things that they're sounding to us that we're trying to get through. I'm meeting with officials later this week, and these are the things that are on the agenda.
We assist families in need financially, and we probably have around 1,800 families in Sydney and the surrounding areas that we assist on a monthly basis. Most of the families that we deal with have multiple barriers. It's not a simple thing that they need a resume or they're short a course for a job. They're dealing with multiple issues, health, education, family support or lack thereof.
The more stressed our clientele is, you can't help but take that burden on as well. So it certainly transfers to workers. We have run into a government who doesn't seem to understand how the lack of funding for our most vulnerable population, which is, children and families who are experiencing poverty or addiction issues, are affected by a lack of resources. And, it's tough. It's tough out there.
The term code census refers to a period where the emergency department is overcrowded, sending patients to regular hospital floors. It's supposed to be used as a rare last resort, but the NSGEU says that's no longer the case, with nearly 150 code census calls last year.
It's within the stats that are put out to us that there is a problem in the system, because this isn't something that was meant to be every day.
The report shows the number of patients to the Halifax Infirmary increased by 23% between 2009 and 2016, and wait times are almost always 2 or 3 times higher than the targeted 8 hours. Health Minister Leo Glavine thanked frontline staff and the union for the report, stating we all need to work together on this complex issue, to which there is no one quick fix.
In the creation of the NSHA, he's very proud that he created the Nova Scotia Health Authority. There's been no money saved. There's been actually more chaos made, more confusion. He has over 63 senior executives.
And Health Minister Randy Delorey says one of the reasons there have been delays in improving health care in the province is because of the time it took to set up the Amalgamated Health Authority.
We've got a lot of work to do. We clearly have a crisis.
The chief of Nova Scotia's largest emergency department says the record number of code census calls are a symptom of a much larger problem facing Canadian healthcare: how to manage the growing number of elderly patients. According to the Department of Health, the wait list for a nursing home placement ranges from 41 days to more than 1,100 days. That's more than 3 years, depending on where you live in the province.
Your first word is crisis. As in, despite hallway medicine and long waits for care, Nova Scotia Liberals won't admit there's a healthcare crisis.
C-R-I-S-I-S, crisis.
Your second word is denial, as in, Liberals are in denial.
D-E-N-I-A-L, denial.
And your third word is solution, as in Premier McNeil, stop denying the crisis and be part of the solution.
SOLUTION. Solution.
The union says Stephen McNeil and his Liberal government have created chaos in hospitals and that there's more than 100,000 people without a doctor. They say the campaign will allow Nova Scotians to voice their concerns.
It's an opportunity for Nova Scotians to let this McNeil government know that they believe healthcare is in crisis as well, and he should recognize it for once and for all going into this opening of the House.
We've really pushed that campaign to shine light on the crisis that is in healthcare, you know, both nursing homes, home support, and in the hospitals as well. Patient beds, even for, not just even on a senior level, just on healthcare as a whole.
President Jason MacLean says the wait time at the infirmary this week is also too long.
It's up to an hour and a half's wait time for triage in the emergency department. Up to an hour and a half. Somebody will die in triage. My members are beside themselves. They're calling here, letting us know what's going on day in, day out. The whole healthcare system is in shambles right now, and McNeil needs to recognize it.
Wait times for adults looking to access mental health services in Nova Scotia can take nearly a year.
Dr. Jeannie Ferguson says conditions are starting to become third world, not first world when it comes to healthcare on the island. And she is calling on the provincial government for more resources.
Cape Breton healthcare has fallen off a cliff. We have lost vascular surgery. We've lost our physical medicine specialty. We've lost a huge number of experienced family doctors. We are having tremendous difficulty filling our emergency room spots with emergency physicians.
As for the NSGEU, they're once again calling on government to act.
What we need is McNeil to do some action. He spent the last 4 years dismantling healthcare. He needs to help put it together.
Natasha Pace, Global News, Halifax.
Wind and rain couldn't keep these people away. Armed with signs and chants, those in the group say the government needs to stop ignoring the healthcare crisis.
We're here to tell the government they need to act, and they need to act now. We seen a budget last week that came down with no new monies for the primary care, no new monies for long-term care, no new monies for home care. This is about treating Nova Scotians and keeping them healthy. You're not doing this. Can they hear us today?
Some days, you know, we're short of staff and we have to have up to 6 or 7 patients on shift. And then, you know, you're just rushing around, you can't get to know people, and, you know, mistakes are being made, and it's not safe for us or our licenses or our patients.
But it's really important to me to be here. 5 years ago today, we were standing here sounding the alarm about the crisis in healthcare. We were fighting for better nurse-to-patient ratios. We knew that this needed to happen. We were in crisis then.
I'm here today because we're on the front lines doing the hard work and we're basically left with the bare minimum. So if we're, excuse my language, if we're fighting the shitstorm on the front line, we need to be here fighting the bats.
Overtime shifts are an everyday reality for nursing units across the province.
People aren't taking other shifts because they're overwhelmed and tired, and they're not getting compensated at the overtime rate. So we have a group of people that are used to working overtime quite often. They're the glue keeping this system together, and the employer didn't realize the value of them.
The Nova Scotia Health Authority says it notified unions they would be reinterpreting the language around overtime in the collective agreements.
So our members, good for them, they took a stand, and ultimately the employer had to reverse their decision.
Did staffing become more of an issue after this was implemented in February?
We believe that in nursing, yes, it was an issue in some parts of the province and in some units.
Grievances have been filed by the unions due to the compensation change. The health authority says the change back to regular overtime pay is an interim measure.
I think it just goes to show that the employer made a huge mistake, and what they're trying to do is just move forward so they can get better work done.
Imagine an emergency room with 4 nurses to care for 7 patients needing one-on-one attention.
9 ambulances waiting in the bay for more than 12 hours. Healthcare workers working 12 hours straight without a break or food. Patients sent home after waiting for hours without being seen. For Nova Scotia's healthcare workers, it's just another Wednesday. Let's send the MacLean Liberals a message they can't ignore. Share your healthcare story at careandcrisis.ca.
A survey of nurses by their union finds many have witnessed adverse events on the job within the past 6 months. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth tonight with what's happening and why they're so concerned about it.
When registered nurse Lauren Croft provides comfort and care for patients,
there's absolutely no better feeling.
But
I still absolutely love what I do, but I lately dread going to work.
Being a nurse has brought on unbearable stress.
I feel pretty crummy being 2 years out of school and actually feeling burnt out from my job already.
Croft's comments come in the same day the Nova Scotia Government Employees Union released the results of a safety survey. Only 12% of NSGEU nurses feel safe at work. 84% have experienced threats or acts of abuse or violence in the past 5 years. 35% have been injured at work.
I feel really unsafe.
The survey also found most nurses believe patients are at risk due to staffing shortages, and almost 70% have been involved in a near-miss or adverse event in the past 6 months.
I would love to accompany Randy DeLaurie and the Premier to go down to the emergency department and shadow some healthcare workers for the day.
Croft is open to having the province's political leaders job shadow her any day.
And see just what it really takes and what we're going through out there.
We have a good working relationship with the government and conveying issues and everything else. It's when things fail that we need to go and speak out on it. And what we're asking is for Nova Scotians to let the politicians know that they need to take action now.
But the action that you need them to take or want them to take is to spend more money.
Oh, absolutely. It's a cost of doing business, and it's spend money on the safety of Nova Scotians and the health of Nova Scotians, not spend money to put money in a person's pocket. They need more people working in the system, and what they need to do is increase the capacity. They haven't done anything in home care or anything in long-term care in terms of beds, so people aren't moving out of the hospitals, and they promise a doctor for every Nova Scotian, which they haven't delivered on, and so people are going to the emergency department, and what we're doing is loading up the system.
It was a hostile reception that perhaps Nova Scotia's Premier didn't quite expect. Stephen MacLean held a news conference in Sydney to announce big healthcare changes in Cape Breton, including permanent closures of the Northside General and New Waterford hospitals. The chair of the Cape Breton Medical Staff Association told CTV News she was given just 12 hours notice about the announcement and that the association was not consulted.
The Premier has big plans with new builds in healthcare in the coming years. The problem with this is they want them to be P3s, public-private partnerships, meaning it's public dollars paying for a private firm to build the buildings and maintain the buildings.
In front of a crowd, Premier Stephen MacLean outlined the newest details of the massive QE2 renovation plan, opting for a P3 model, public-private partnership.
It's been proven over the decades, and we're currently doing a study right now with the CCPA, but it's been proven over decades that it costs much more to have a privately run operation or a privately run physical plant than owning it yourself.
With Cape Breton, the announcement of the closure of 2 hospitals down there, we have members that work in those hospitals right now, and they are going to be moving to what they call a P3 model, which is a private partnership model. And our concerns is right there is what impacts are going to happen to our members now. We suspect that a lot of that service will be probably contracted out, impacting our members, specifically with the maintenance and engineering department, because we've been told that the buildings will be maintained by the partners. We are not in agreement with that, and we're looking at ways right now to put forward some proposals to government and to the employer as well on how we can maintain those buildings not as P3s, but under the province, so that all those members would not be impacted by that. As well as we feel strongly that we would be able to provide a better service and maintain those buildings ourselves.
The way the system's set up now is people are going home, and our home care workers do a great job on behalf of Nova Scotians, and but they need the recognition from government, and they need a recognition from their employers of the work that they do. They're not paid enough, and their benefits need to be improved, and that's what we're off to doing now.
The challenges for NSGEU with continuing care workers, it's going to be a challenge to get them to come to home care or long-term care. It's a job that we're underpaid, and we are professionals, but we are underpaid professionals.
And we just actually launched a new campaign just to show Nova Scotians the work that home care workers do, and that actually launched today. You see it on pre-rolls, probably on Global.
I worry about my mom all the time. Except when her home care worker, Sarah's visiting.
They're in bargaining now, and they're looking at huge wholesale changes. We also struck a committee with government through the Minister's office and through the Department of Health and Wellness that we're going to do work and make recommendations December 1st to the Minister of Health. So this is something that's very important for this sector, because this sector is growing, and it's the fastest growing sector in Nova Scotia that's been acknowledged by us and admitted to by the Department of Health. So there's work that needs to be done there, and we're happy to be doing the work with government for that.
Recruitment is a big issue. We've just started our place, and I know some of the other nursing homes as well have started doing in-house training of people, bringing people in to start training them, because there aren't enough CCAs graduating from the classes, community college and I think workforce or work care, whatever it's called. And there needs to be more spaces open up, or more encouragement for more people to go to become CCAs. And I don't know what the solution to that is. Better pay them better, I guess, would be one.
So long-term care isn't being viewed, in my belief, as health care like acute care gets viewed, although resources aren't getting brought to acute care either. So right now we have no new beds. For the entirety that the MacLean government has been in power, which is 6 years, we have no new long-term care beds. Long-term care used to be sought after for some workers. Not any longer. The rate of pay needs to be addressed, the hours of work need to be addressed, and the whole safety issues need to be addressed. You have people working short all the time because people don't want to be at work, they're too stressed out and too run down. So these are issues we're trying to tackle right now in the long-term care sector.
If we can bring some recognition to the public and everybody see what we do, it's important, because they can deem us essential services but not consider us healthcare, and essentially that is what we do. We take care of your loved ones.
Our group home workers work with youth in need and adults with developmental disabilities. This is an undervalued sector that really doesn't get much in terms of pay, pensions, or benefits. So this is something that we've been fighting constantly at the table to increase. OH&S is a huge issue in this sector. We've had issues in Cumlacraine and Sydney, as well as Yakro and Yarmouth, and it's something that we continue to make a top priority in order to get out there and educate all the members. And we give a helping hand as well to all employers that are out there, because sometimes it's their funding that is lax, for lack of a better term, and we pitch in with help from our OH&S officer and our EROs. So occupational health and safety has been something that's been very important to me, and I didn't realize it was this important to me coming out of a correctional facility. We think safety all the time, and then I learned at becoming president here that not all workplaces think safety first.
There's always issues for occupational health and safety. Where we're so spread out with our agency, we have homes throughout Metro. There's always issues, whether it be violence in the workplace because of some of the aggressive residents, or some people are just clumsy and they hurt themselves like me. So there's always OH&S issues. We do our best to keep everything safe for our staff and our clients, but there's always something that comes up.
You really don't know what you're going into each and every time you go to a visit to a client's home. Safety always arises. It can arise overnight, it can rise in between visits. You never know what to expect until you open that door. I'm on the Occupational Health and Safety Committee with my own agency, and we're constantly having educational workshops and to how important it is to report safety issues.
There was a few initiatives that we worked on, or working groups that we worked on this past term in terms of safety. The Premier put together a working group. More work needs to be done in safety in the rural emergency departments, to which we have members that work there. Another initiative that we worked on was called the Workplace Safety Action Plan. It was headed up by Aware NS. The whole premise of this was to change the culture within group homes, within long-term care, and within home care. What we did was come out with a 5-year plan, and it's just rolling out now this year, and we got another 4 years that we have mapped out on when we're going to implement the 21 recommendations that come out of this plan.
The occupational health and safety challenges in our building are in our contained learning center more than they are in the classroom, but we're feeling shortages in the classroom, so we're spread more thinly than when I started the job 25 years ago. We have to cover more people and more situations at the same time than we ever did before.
Our members, especially in the East Coast Forensic Facility, they have been up against it this past term. Everything's still moving along, not quite at the pace that I would like to see it go, but we are getting improvements in the facility, but it's only because of the strength of some members on that committee, and I want to thank them for that work that they've been doing.
The assault of 3 Dartmouth courthouse sheriffs earlier this week has brought the safety of frontline corrections staff back into the spotlight. Now the Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union is calling on the province to ensure no one is subjected to such trauma going forward.
They're at risk, and they want to serve Nova Scotians, and they want to do the best job they can, but they should be safe while they're doing it.
The attack saw an inmate injure a trio of guards. They've now been treated and released from hospital, but MacLean says the whole ordeal was unnecessary.
They've been through a traumatic event, so this is something that could have been avoided if the implementation of the Beaton Report happened. Right now we have a huge policy grievance in to talk about staffing levels in the sheriff's offices, and it's something that the employer wants to move forward, but they don't want to pay for it. So I guess, as always, they have to be compelled, and we're going to take every step in every measure to have the proper staffing levels in sheriff services. The political end of government has gotten this right. What they've done is they've added sheriffs into the presumptive PTSD legislation, which is an acknowledgement of how dangerous their job is. However, it hasn't translated to their frontline management or their senior management to where they don't want to implement the measures that are needed to be put in place in order for somebody to carry on in a safe manner at their work. Work with staff instead of just telling them this is safe or this isn't safe. No, we're the frontline workers. We know what's safe and what isn't. Now in correctional services, we had an issue of short staffing. We have too many of our correctional officers are dealing with stress, especially in Northeast Nova Correctional Facility and the Central Nova Correctional Facility.
The Nova Scotia Government and General Employees Union says 2 correctional officers were assaulted by inmates at the Central Nova Scotia Correctional Facility on May 31st. The Management Employee Communications Committee at the jail subsequently decided that inmates in that area would be let out in the day room only one at a time until the investigation was completed. The union says the superintendent unilaterally decided the next day to let several out at a time. Soon after, an inmate attacked another inmate.
My members have no confidence in their superintendent because the superintendent is going against everything that they already have agreed to. We had some managers, I believe, that didn't really take safety seriously. And our members reached out, our members yelled out. We did a few rallies. I did some lobbying with government once they started to speak to us again. And we just moved the issue forward.
Trying to support the safe work practices that exist in the other facilities within the province. We're working towards a new supervision model within the facility. We support it, but we want to be safe in doing so. Northeast Nova has safeguards with their workstations, with policies in which offenders are put into the day rooms. We don't have that here in Burnside. We've been given 2 weeks notice to transition from the old to the new. We want the same safe measures. We want to be able to work in our workplaces and be safe. We want to return home at night, and I think if the other facilities are getting it, we should have it too.
What we're going to do is keep our feet to the ground there, keep the employer's feet to the fire, and we're just going to push forward on it because I believe that the employer knows what's right and they're trying to figure out what's right, and we're just working with them on it to get things in a proper place.
We've come to the point in my place of employment where it's not quite as demanding, because we've gone through the battles and that, but like the newer jails, Burnside and Northeast, they need a lot of help in unions and just backing up, good work, safety issues and stuff like that. Management interprets things in the collective bargaining agreement different than they were intended. So sometimes we have to grieve things and, so you gotta have a union to keep people honest.
A weekend riot at the youth jail in Waterville, Nova Scotia leaves some of the people who work there now quite concerned for their safety.
Nova Scotia's Justice Department is looking into what it calls an unprecedented incident at the Waterville Youth Jail on Sunday. 4 staff members were seriously injured and taken to hospital. Another was treated at the facility. NSGEU President Jason MacLean says the youth involved have violent criminal histories.
The risk is always there, and what we're looking at today is how to stop that.
The NSGEU leadership is meeting with Waterville staff tonight and will meet with government officials on Monday.
And you have to be safe at work, and you need the proper staffing levels, you need the proper equipment and the proper training. Now they have a more robust knowledge of health and safety in that workplace, and not only that, what their rights in and what their rights are, and that's important.
Move Over campaign that has brought so much to the forefront with the safety of those people that are out there protecting us and saving us and helping us. We've brought that awareness. It's been big.
I think the era that we're kind of moving in now, it's more building and relationship building with government, community agencies, and ourselves and our members, and that's different than previous where we were just fighting for our survival.
We are honored to team up with the Public Service Commission to open up the Office of the Workplace Mental Health. It was no small feat. It was something that was originally brought forward by our former president, Joan Jessam, and carried on forward by our executive director, Robin MacLean. And when I came in day one of the job, it was put on my desk. This is something that we're involved in and something that the Public Service Commission would like you to move forward with. I had conversations with Laura Lee Langley, the Commissioner of the Public Service Commission, and I wanted to be in on it. This is something that we started and we must finish. It is for the betterment of our members, and this is what we need to keep pushing out. So anybody that goes to work, we deal with a lot, and our mental health is at risk at work, and this is just another way to help people out in the workplace. So PTSD legislation, it's something that the NDP brought forward to the House of Assembly 5 times. It was voted down by the ruling Liberal Party 5 times, and it was quite frustrating. And then UCO, the Union of Canadian Correctional Officers, reached out to me, and they had a conversation with me that they wanted to have a demonstration at Province House, and could we have correctional officers there with them and team up with them, and I thought it was a great idea. They had a transfer truck that they were bringing there, and the transfer truck was broken up into 3 different places in the bed of the truck. One area had videos of different takedowns and different things that could happen in the facility, and the second part had a bunch of contraband, and the third part had guards, correctional officers, that were pretending to be inmates. And the Premier, I guess, was shocked at what went down there, and outside he started to talk to us, and he said, I didn't know it was like this in a facility. And he said right there on the spot, we're going to enact post-traumatic stress legislation, to which blew us away. That's what we were looking for. And but it took him walking through it to see it. I think he really learned from that experience, and we were able to give input. Now, the legislation isn't perfect. We were able to get other occupations added into it, but we're really on a lobby now and working, trying to get social workers added into it, because we believe that they should be added in as well.
Victims of domestic violence in Nova Scotia will soon be able to take up to 4 months off of work with full job protection. Labour Minister Labby Kasoulis says this is geared toward low-income earners who are less likely to have paid sick time. But critics say it's especially difficult for those people to take unpaid time off.
So they originally came with no days, but then they brought it back and fixed it, so to speak, by putting in some days. And kudos to our staff, kudos to our Women's Issues Committee and the Nova Scotia Federation of Labour. A lot of work was done on this to push forward and to get paid days off. But there needs to be 10 paid days off. That is a standard that must be reached, and it should be across the board. So we're working towards getting there.
I myself haven't had to need that resource, but I have heard from other members that that language, I think, will be a very great asset to them.
We have been able to negotiate language with our own staff, IAMW Local 2797, and with the Elizabeth Fry Society that supports women who are victims of intimate partner violence.
So I think that language is going to be able to give voice to people that maybe feel that they can't voice their opinion, or it'll give them some strength.
I'm proud to say that this language is now being slated to be pushed at all of our tables. The committees and councils of NSGEU really carry out a lot of action on behalf of the union. It gets us into the communities. It helps us be able to further communicate or a specific goal, be it human rights or women's issues. We can really get out and they're the branches, the arms of NSGEU in terms of social justice.
I was fortunate to be the liaison with our NSGEU Women's Committee, and especially this year during the celebrations of our 60th anniversary as a union, we decided that it would be great to celebrate those 60 years by offering 60 for 60. So we donated 60 hours of volunteerism in the community, and we did that in part with Feed Nova Scotia, where we sorted food and packaged and packed up boxes for them as a committee. And our other opportunity was at Cancer Nova Scotia, where we went to the lodge that gives here in Halifax, and they depend on volunteer to do everything. So we gave them our volunteer hours and we cleaned all 160 windows in the building. And it's rewarding to volunteer, but it was a great way of NSGEU putting ourselves out there and giving back.
I really liked the volunteer. I think it was the 60 hours for 60 years, and I was on Women's Issues Committee, and we did quite a few volunteer hours, and I know other committees did, and they were in the stand, and then you get to see Feed Nova Scotia, and we did the lodge, the Cancer Lodge over in Halifax. They get to see NSGEU, and then the people from the Cancer Society came to the Women's Conference because they had set up that relationship, I guess.
During this past term, I was honored to be selected as a delegate from the National Union to represent labor at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women in New York City. It was an incredibly rewarding opportunity and an experience. It was exhausting. There were over 400 sessions running simultaneously in the first week alone. And in order to make sure that labor had their voice at the rooms and at the table, we were literally running from one session to another. It was incredible. On behalf of labor in the country, we worked hard with the Canadian Labour Congress delegation to ensure that our points got made as part of the final summation to the Commission. Those documents carry on year after year and are revisited after a period of time to ensure that they are meeting some of the goals.
One of the things that I'm most enthused about over the past term is my work with the Disabilities Committee that we've set up since the last convention. That committee is a real all-star committee. The people who are on it are experts in the field of disabilities and issues that people with disabilities or workers with disabilities face in the workplace. And together, we're really changing the direction that the NSGEU is going in terms of the way that it deals with its workers with disabilities. So we found some statistics from Stats Canada that were really good that showed that the single most influencing factor in the workplace on how much discrimination an employee receives is related to how much education they get when it comes to disabilities in the workplace. So we've established a requirement that a bursary will be awarded to a member with a disability or a dependent of a member with a disability.
Social Rec work on various activities of supporting the funding campaigns, funding applications that come through all the Metro Councils throughout the province, as well as we're the ones that take the lead on the Family Day Picnic every year. So I believe it's over 10 years now that the Family Picnic has been going. I believe this might be the 10th year. One of the big things we take on is actually supporting the NSGEU staff for convention. So you're going to see our faces a lot. There's 8 of us, plus our executive liaison, which is Kim Jenkins. So we're going to do a lot of work with trying to make this convention as great as it possibly can for you.
So I've been involved a lot with the Human Rights Committee. I chaired that committee for the last 3 years. We've done Pride all over Nova Scotia, which has been fabulous. What else? We've done the Sock It to Poverty campaign, which is a long-running campaign with NSGEU. We've donated close to, I think it was 6,000 pairs of socks this year, and we raised almost $7,000.
I love the Sock It to Poverty campaign for a variety of reasons. It never ceases to amaze me how generous our membership is, even when we're struggling ourselves. And I'm fortunate enough to see both sides. I work for community services, and part of my role is to interact quite frequently with the trustees of the shelter, so I get to see the benefits of the donations and the appreciation that the men and women have.
And then our new initiative is Feed Our Future, which runs from January to June, and that is with Feed Nova Scotia. So from the Human Rights Committee, after traveling and doing different pride parades, we noticed that some unions had vans, so we put a recommendation to the board to purchase a van, which was purchased and it looks awesome, and also 2 of the pop-up tents. For Labor Day, we do a lot with Labor Day, and we weren't noticeable. So with our new tents and our van, everybody knows that we're there.
I think the challenges going forward will be probably similar to the challenge that we faced over the last 3 years, because we do have a majority Liberal government in the province, and I think they're going to continue to push their agenda of driving down wages and driving down benefits.
Well, the last election, the union decided that they were going to more or less target some of the softer MLAs.
And now in these final days of the campaign, some of the largest unions are telling members to vote anything but Liberal on May 30th.
And it was a great little plan, and it worked. I would say it was successful in my opinion, and we did get some of them out, and they did go in with a not big as majority as they thought they would have.
In 2018, NSGEU turned 60 years old. We decided to celebrate by having celebrations all across the province as opposed to having it in one place. And we piggybacked on some events that were already in existence. For instance, the corn maze that we do, that the Cumberland-Colchester Regional Council does, as well as the NSGEU picnic that's held the second Saturday in July every year. And then we had two other events. One was held at Upper Clements Park, which was a huge success, and another one as well at Two Rivers in Cape Breton. So we had an opportunity to celebrate around the province, which I believe is the true way that NSGEU should be celebrating.
You know, the union shouldn't just be about fighting for its members. It should be about celebrating what NSGEU has done and how far we've come, how long we've been here. And it gave a lot of members who don't necessarily connect with the union a chance to get out, have a little bit of fun with their families, and you know, meet some people, like-minded people who they have stuff in common with.
And when we first started out, I was on the committee, and it was like we might get 100 to 200 members and families and whatnot. But over the years, we've built it and built it and built it, and now we have up to sometimes 1,000 members and family coming.
I went to the events in Sherbrooke, which I thought was fabulous. It was the first one we had. We had a lot of people travel down Highway 7 to a place that many have never been, and a lot of people were very appreciative that something was held outside of Metro.
Take the moment in every area to celebrate the fact that NSGEU has achieved so much, and we've come together over 60 years and accomplished a lot together.
So WCB, they're doing a new transformation and they're calling it WCB 2020.
The change that we're undergoing right now, it's fundamental. It's a game changer of how we're going to deliver business.
They're changing their systems and processes, which we found out will result in the contracting out or elimination of 10 to 15% of the workforce.
Because if they're into long-term change, where if it's 10 to 15% of the bargaining unit this time, what's it going to be in the next round?
In the last round of bargaining, the committee made it a priority to improve job security for the members.
We have a call center now that's all within Nova Scotia. There is a fear that that could as well be outside of Nova Scotia, leaving, you know, not only our people that we're concerned about, but jobs leaving Nova Scotia as well.
They stood strong with their bargaining committee and they had their demands met. They strengthened the MOA that talked about job security. They pushed everything forward that they need to push forward, but they only got it done because the membership stuck behind them and believed in having a strike mandate would get them to that spot, and it worked.
Today we are announcing the following changes. Our government will move to unify the education system by dissolving the 7 elected regional boards and creating 1 provincial advisory council.
So in public education system, there was huge upheaval. I mean, all of our locals, they were really feeling the pressure. When you get rid of school boards and you make the Minister of Education the sole employer, then people get kind of nervous on who it is they're supposed to be reporting to, what is happening in their sector, what is the future of it. So it was quite problematic for our members to go through that without any type of direction from government.
The way the Liberals dealt with the healthcare in Nova Scotia, and they decided that they needed to deal with the education system in the same light and decided to legislate people back to work instead of doing fair and collective bargaining, which they agreed that they would do previously to being elected. And this blew up.
And then government comes with Bill 75, which imposed a collective agreement on the teachers union. That had our members really, really worried because they were wondering what is the future for them in bargaining.
We are here to speak out as strongly as we can against Bill 75 and to point out how fundamentally flawed and dishonest it is. The bill adds to the continuing anti-labor, anti-worker, anti-collective bargaining legacy of the McNeil government.
We have assurances from Minister Churchill that he is going around and he is talking to people. Well, that's not enough. What he's done is made a decision before he talked to anybody. And what we're asking the government to do is to take a pause. Just stop for a moment. Let's talk about this. Together we can come up with the right solutions. It's the frontline workers that must be put forward in this, and the students as well.
They legislated the teachers back to work, and the teachers took to the Education Act and went to work to rule, which is fine. That's their right. But just that alone caused chaos in my job, caused chaos in parents' job, and no one wanted to listen. Because as far as McNeil was concerned, he was doing the right thing. He's allowed to do that because he's the premier. And instead of being democratic, he was a dictator.
In the education sector, there was a lot of change in the last couple of years with all of the unions, both NSGEU and the NSTU. And NSTU had a period in February of, I believe it was 2018, where they were looking at strike and where there was a lot of difficulty in the workplace and in public. A lot of people didn't understand exactly what was happening, and they were kind of looking for more information than the newspaper was giving. So I felt the NSGEU really helped to answer some of the questions and to provide support to the NSGEU members about what to do while the NSTU was under such a spotlight.
Our members in stock, they had to deal with the new devices that they were given and a whole new system for their routing. And not only that, to have it roll out at the start of the school year where they need to be on time and they need to be able to pick up their kids. But when you have things changing on the fly, it's kind of hard to pick up with. So they had to deal with a lot of public outrage.
The school year has only just begun, but already frustrations are running high with stock transportation.
Unfortunately, because the parents weren't able to get through to our management or to stock, they were starting to take their anger and frustration out onto our drivers and our monitors that were showing up to pick up the kids. And sometimes it got very verbally abusive, and on a few occasions it actually became physically abusive. So on top of a driver trying to find their route, trying to get the kids on the bus, trying to stay safe, they had parents that were also attacking them for no reason. So we brought it to light, and our ERO came back and spoke with Jason and communication, did a soft campaign. And once it was set out, we saw a lot of the parents groups pages that are on Facebook really come around quickly because they realized, yeah, we're getting angry at the wrong people.
I'll tell you, our members are awesome. You see them pulling into the office, and you know when there's a stock meeting in the office because you got 5-6 buses that are parked in the office, and it's a sight to see. I just want to thank all those members that work in the public education system. You've held it together in this whole time of turmoil, and they've done a great job, and thank you very much. Our post-secondary sector is made up of members who support university and college students and faculties right across the province.
So my hope is that the diversity and equity really gets pushed, that, you know, that we are welcoming to people different than ourselves, and that we are welcoming and make it a family and a community where people feel they can voice their concerns and issues.
So members at Dalhousie University are telling us that they're feeling the impact of decade-long cuts and are reporting the effects of stress and overwork on their health. Our members at St. FX are generally feeling this same tendency, with fewer people doing the same amount of administrative, IT, and support work. Our members at the NSCC had to take a strong stand this time around. Like other locals, they had to go right to the end to conciliation, but in order to get in conciliation, we went across the province at many sites to meet face-to-face with the members and solicit a strike mandate. It was achieved with great success, and they finally got a deal in conciliation because of that strike mandate.
Something that's always key to a union's activism and its direction is the education of its members. We've always had a good education program, but we're taking this opportunity of a change in leadership in education program to revamp it from top to bottom and really change the way that we offer our education. We're diversifying the education, we're expanding programs, and we're changing the platforms in which we offer education, and that's really exciting for me.
Well, one of the goals that we had was to make sure that we weren't building for now, we were building for 10 to 20 years in the future. So I'm glad we put a lot of extra space in, because we actually fill the spaces now during the week with meetings and with our members and with other community organizations at times. We prioritize our members meeting here first, but when we're not meeting, there's a lot of other organizations who have taken advantage of the fact that we have a very nice big space to meet in. And I think it's really pushed the PR of NSGEU into being an integral part of the community rather than this union face, which, you know, would be the old style way of looking at a union. So I think now we're looking more at the union at being a part of the face of your community and a part of your community.
NSGEU has 5 members on the Federation of Labour. It's a great opportunity for us as leadership of NSGEU to get out and interact with other unions and to learn the challenges that they're facing. We can learn from them some of the strategies that they use, and we also gain that support from them.
One promise I made to a convention last term was that Nova Scotians will learn about NSGEU and will learn about our members. You got to see us in community rinks. You got to see us on buses, on billboards, at Tim Hortons. You got to see us through online shareable ads that we had introducing our members, and the key was people getting to see our membership, getting to see how diverse NSGEU is in terms of occupation and people. So what we did was we continued on that road, rolled it out for an entire year, just over an entire year, and I think it was quite successful to where people are saying, wait now, I know that person. We are in the community. We are NSGEU.
It was important, I think, for the NSGEU to do a branding campaign to shed a positive light on NSGEU, because I feel in the past, because of the media and things that were taking place, it was kind of there was a negative tone to our union. It got our name out there in a positive light, and I think that's changed the swing of our union this term.
I help with ordering the food.
I work with the ferry down in Digby Neck.
I'm a registered prosthetic technician and I work at the Nova Scotia Rehab Centre.
I work at the Napa Valley Regional School Board as a student support worker.
I see successes every day.
We had a strategic plan headed up by our Secretary-Treasurer, Darren McPhee, and he led us through various exercises to where we believe we have a strong strategic plan that we can build on after convention. The key to this here last term is to see a problem, work it out as best you can, and then only by consensus we can come with the right answer. And that's what we did over this term.
This board is very interesting. A lot of good debates. Everybody has a voice. Everybody's respected. And it's really nice to see all the different types of positions being able to get along and see how diverse we really are.
The board has been an amazing experience. This is my first time ever on the board. To me, it's become like a family.
Very well-oiled machine. Everybody knows what they're doing, and everybody has a part to contribute.
The board is a great way to learn a lot of information about the NSGEU that you would never come into contact with. It's a very open area where you can have free discussion and free debate on issues that concern the NSGEU and the membership.
This was my first term on this board, and I have to say this was the best time. The last 3 years have been the best time of my life. I've met a lot of great people.
Everybody seems to get along, and we're working together, and we've broken out our meetings for the strategic initiatives, and everybody seems to have their ideas, and we discuss them and work together.
I look forward to seeing all these people every 6 weeks when we come together, and everybody looks out for everybody, and they greet you the same every time you walk through the doors, and it's a family, and we support each other.
So we've seen over this last 3 years crises in education, crises in the justice system, and crisis in healthcare itself. What this board and what the executive have done has shown great leadership in taking these issues on. We've offered a number of solutions, and we've actually gotten the year of government, and I think we're moving forward in a positive direction.
But I believe that this board is very dedicated to having discussions to point NSGEU in the direction that members are wanting to see changes made.
This board, I think, is a very open board. I feel like we've been able to express our concerns and views, and everyone seems to have an opportunity to be heard. So I've really enjoyed this board.
I mentioned this at the last board meeting. I mean, I've been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and being involved in the board itself has really allowed me to maintain some sense of normalcy. When you're back and forth to the doctors and blood tests and scans, and you have to deal with that, stepping out of that, going to a normal event like a board meeting, puts you back in your normalcy, puts you back to where you were before the diagnosis. And yeah, there's really no better way to say that. It gave me back something that I lost.
When you have an executive of 5 people myself, the first vice president, second vice president, third vice president, secretary, treasurer, and then you have 29 other members of the board of directors that come from all the different corners of NSGEU, be it regional council or occupational council, and they all come together and become such a cohesive unit, like just working towards everything for the union. Agendas are pushed to the side or non-existent. When you got all these bargaining issues that are happening and you're hearing from members, for them to be focused on what NSGEU needs to do and to be able to execute it, it's just a duty that they did, that they rose to, and they performed successfully, and I'm really thankful for the board that we had this past term.
If I had 2 words to describe the board this term, it would be efficient and positive.
I would say very united.
Dynamic.
Sticking together.
It's a good group of folks that come together and put the interests of the membership first every day.
Well, that's kind of a tough question to say in 2 words, but I think very energetic.
A family at Thanksgiving or Christmas having a meal and arguing about politics.
The board is really unified, and we're easy to talk to.
The board is intelligent, concerned, and most of all, motivated to do what's best for the membership.
Exciting, transparent, efficient.
An energetic bunch, and I think we're compassionate.
Getting things done.
Cooperative and friendly.
Excellence at its best.
The board is a dynamic, well-rounded group of people.
Cohesive and congenial.
Welcoming, open-minded.
So they work well together, good communication.
Involved and proactive.
Say we're a united front.
Fun and energetic.
Awesome.